Murphy, did you know 1 in 4 women experience abuse in some type of way?
Wow. Did you know that 1 in 10 men also experience abuse in some type of way? See, on today's show, we'll be talking about abuse, sexual, physical, emotional abuse, and the effects of it, not only on the person being abused, but on the kids. Stay tuned, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to In the Know. We are so excited about the changes that we have made. We are so excited about the topics that we will be discussing this season, or this year rather, because of many requests and different ones talking to us. They wanted to deal with more relevant issues that are affecting the community, affecting the body, and affecting things that are going on in the lives of people. And today's topic is one that's going to really call to question some of the issues in life, and it is a big issue that no one wants to really speak about, and we're going to be talking about abuse on today. And I want to start off by saying this: abuse is real. No one deserves to be abused. No one needs abuse in their life. It's not right for it to happen on any level. But with that, I want to say this. I want to say that the first statistic I want to look at is 1 in 4 women are abused in some part or in some time of their life. And that's where we're going to start. But then we're also going to talk about who does the abusing and where abuse comes from and how it happens. And not only that, but we're also, later on down the line, we're going to talk, we have a guest with us that is amazing, that has dealt with abuse from a child's perspective. But first of all, I want to welcome my co-host, LaTanya.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be here and excited about the topics that we're going to talk about, and even today.
Yes.
I'm glad to be here.
And it's one of those topics that, you know, believe it or not, a lot of people try to ignore it. A lot of people don't want to deal with because of the ugliness of it.
Yes, and like you said, people try to hide it, deny it because of social status or, you know, their position or where they are in the family and things of that nature. But again, one that we really need to discuss and that we're going to discuss.
Yeah, and you know, I started off by saying the first thing that I said was 25% or 1 in every 4 women are abused in their life.
Yes, you know, and in that same note, you know, when you look at that, and I have the statistics pulled up as well from the National Domestic Violence. We talk about women a lot too, and I know we're talking to our guest today, but the truth of the matter is, here's another statistic as well: 1 in 10 men are abused, and that's something that we definitely don't talk about because we always look at it as the woman being abused and being the victim, but men are as well, and that's something that we need to acknowledge and talk about as well.
So that means, you know, the crazy thing and the most amazing thing is that means out of 100, if in 100 women were in a place, 25 of them have been abused.
Yes, exactly.
So, and also if 100 men, 10 men have been abused, and it's a silent epidemic that nobody wants to discuss. And what's amazing, here in San Antonio has one of the highest rates of abuse. And it's not being discussed, it's not being addressed, it's not being dealt with on any level. And then not only that, another thing that's not spoken is that most abuse happens by people that they know, especially from a sexual abuse level. It is usually someone that is familiar with the family.
Exactly, definitely, on every level. And there's so many areas of abuse that we could talk about, from child abuse and emotional abuse and mental abuse. And whom else, you know, is the person that's closest to us, that understands how we think, that understands how we move. And so these are the things, again, like Murphy said, we're going to talk about today, is the abuse.
So with that being said, we want you to stay tuned. We want you to stay tuned and call someone, invite someone to listen and to view what's going on, because I promise you it's going to help somebody along the way. And when we come back, we'll come back with our special guest, Veronica Lino, as she shares her story.
Shut your mouth! Shut your mouth!
Hard to watch, isn't it?
You're sorry?
Does this make it easier?
How sorry are you again, huh?
How about this?
stupid you are.
Maybe you should just look
how
away.
How stupid are you? Tell me how stupid you are. I don't want to hear it.
Is that better? It's hard to watch, but if you or someone you know is in an abusive relationship, make the call.
And welcome back to In the Know. And as stated before we went to our break, we have a very special guest with us today. We have none other than Veronica Lino. She's here with us to share her story of abuse and the effect of the abuse. Veronica, thank you so much for joining us on today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yes. Well, you know, you come on the show, and as we talked before, we just want to share with our audience on abuse. And we know that for your household and
Right.
growing up in that environment, that it was physical abuse that,
Right.
that you actually saw, that you witnessed, the physical abuse. But being a child in that environment, we know that it can have lasting effects on you, and some emotional scars, emotional
Right.
abuse, and mental abuse that we want to just talk about on today, and just share with the audience, and even leave them with, you know, your story and how healing has come about. So again, thank you so much for being on the show, and just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me, guys. My name is Veronica Lino. I am the founder and CEO of Real Weight Loss LLC and the creator of Bruce Fitness Programming.
Right, and that is awesome. And I mean, you have done a great work in that, and we're going to tie that in a little bit later. But we want you to share about the abuse that happened in your family and how it affected you, and where it started, where you noticed it starting.
Right. So thank you for having me on. And actually what I do is I have the opportunity to, even in my business, to live out healing and what I call real weight loss. It began when I was 5 years old, and I was sharing this very story with my mom. And I saw my mother's slippers shaking on the floor, and I can still remember her voice, and I hate, it's like a screeching yell that we remember. And I remember my brothers and I were crying, and we were scared. And so, and that was the first moment when I was 5 that we saw and experienced that in our household. And so from 5 all the way, until probably about a year and a half before my father passed, that was something that he was working out in his life. And in my maturity, through the being afraid, through the being angry, depressed, through those emotions, and growing up, I also realized that there were some things that either happened to my father that he never was able to completely work out in the way he wanted to. And so I now understand that in my life, but it started at the age of 5.
Wow. And a lot of times that's when it starts, when it's young or whenever the kids are around. And was there a lot of abuse that you guys seen going on in the house at that time?
We did see it. We did see it. If it was probably about every 2 years, it felt like the abuse happened. One of the worst, it was actually, and then around seasons, like around Christmas and Thanksgiving.
Stressful times, yeah.
I could feel it, so I'm actually now able to sense emotions in other people.
Wow.
Because I could feel that something in my father was not right. And every time it happened, his eyes actually changed. It was like he was an entirely different person. So
Right. So now, one thing you mentioned was the fear. What kind of fear did you as a child feel or experience during these times of that this was going on?
It was just that my mom was going to die. Like at one point, it may get so bad that she won't come out of it.
Wow.
And so when you're young, I was so angry. Like I was so mad when I was a little girl, because when you're in that situation, you feel so helpless. And being helpless is the worst feeling ever. And because you feel helpless, you get angry because you cannot do anything. And I was also so angry with my mother for a long time because she stayed in that situation. And she explained to us that, that she made a vow before God as well. And so those are things that I had to work out, because I would literally not understand why God would want my mother to stay in a situation like that. Yeah. And so those are things I had to work out and find peace in as well.
So it affected your relationship with your mother, and if it's safe to say, did you have a problem with God, if you will, during that time? Like, God, this is not fair, or why are you putting my mother through this? And how did you handle, especially the relationship part with your mother? Because one thing I'm hearing a lot of is there's anger
Yes.
Right.
that has a lot to do with what's going on and the helplessness
Right.
affecting you and your family in this situation.
Right. Well, with our mom, we really just wanted her to leave. I mean, we would always beg, like, let's just leave. We don't have to be here. Like, we don't need to have a father in our home.
Wow.
Anything is better than this. Like, we would always tell our mom, like, we would be the ones begging our mom to leave, but she grew up without a father as well. So that's where a lot of it came from. But in being young, I didn't understand that. And so for me, when you asked me about how I felt with my mother, when I was younger, it was I wanted her to leave. But the older I got, that's when kind of the anger, like why?
Yeah.
Because now I don't know how to have a relationship with a guy. Now I seek out this type of person.
Right.
Like now I feel like I'm dysfunctional in relationships. So that's when the like being angry at the situation happened. And as far as my relationship with God, I don't know that it was affected when I was younger in a negative way, because my mother was our Sunday school teacher. my father was in ministry. He was a minister. So I never really, I questioned God. And it's crazy that I got angry, but if I was to ever have strayed from God, because I know I did when I was older, but it never had anything to do with my, I never really gave up on God. I guess that's the answer to the question. Even though I was discouraged in the situation, I was angry, and I did turn away for a little bit. I never completely gave up on him.
Wow,
So.
wow, that's a lot.
I spoke with someone else in a similar situation, parents in ministry.
Right.
And so some of the similarities that I'm hearing, and one of the things that she said, she sought out God. It's like, I have to depend on someone. And I know that's not everyone's story, but for you and for another young lady as well that I spoke with, you all depended on God. It's like, I have to, there has to be a rescue point. There has to be a way of escape in the situation. But, I love statistics. I love to look up those things. I want to talk about, because you said something, there were seasons. There were seasons, and sometimes people don't recognize that. And you could see that even as a young girl. What does that look like? When people are abusive, what does that look like? What are the behaviors? And so some of the predictive indicators of abuse, I looked it up on the domestic shelters, but history of abuse, like you said, what happened in this person's life? And we know women abuse as well. I've witnessed that as well, where women abuse, but physical abuse for that person, low self-esteem, codependent behavior, untreated mental illness, drug and alcohol abuse, and even when you say Christmas, because you said that stressors, financial pressure can cause that abuse. And I think some people, they do recognize those triggers and they opt to stay because they feel as if I know the triggers. And so the how to handle that is to avoid the triggers, and so I know that it's Christmas time. Don't ask daddy for anything. Don't ask mommy for anything. And we're going to minimize this our wish list because it here's the stressors or here are the triggers. And I think some people versus reaching out, they feel as if they really understand the person, they can help the person, that the person will change, and they know how to avoid the triggers, and that's not always the case with some people. And some people actually don't know how to escape, but there is a way of escape. And so, you talked about her making the vow to the Lord, and definitely not suggesting that you stay in an abusive situation, because there is help out there, and we'll discuss that a little further, and some numbers that you can call to get help as well. Yeah. So.
Well, and it's so much that's being said, and in my mind, I'm just relating back to the damage that is done, not only to the woman, because I did research, and the research I did, it took me places I didn't imagine going, especially emotionally and physically. I've never, I can relate to your situation, because with my mother, I can remember the phone call I made. I was doing the research, and I told her what I was doing, and my mother is 71 years old now. And when I began to share about abuse, she said, this is what she said. She said, her father died when she was 6 years old. My grandmother remarried. But the man that she remarried was physically abusive to her, physically abusive to her younger brother and one of her sisters. And they were put in a situation where if the man did not leave, CPS was going to come in and take the kids. So my grandmother became resentful of my mother because she felt like it's your fault my man is leaving. But my mother, she married before we were born. But some of you, if you watch the last show, you'll understand the situation. But then she said, once I had kids, I never remarried. I never got married. I never had a man in the house because I didn't want my kids to experience what I experienced. So she neglected her life, or she put her life on hold because of the trauma that she experienced as a child. You know, and a lot of times that's what we do, and I'm relating that to your situation when you said you have a problem with relationships with men and how to relate to men because you may feel this may happen to me as well. Am I correct with saying that?
Or you know, do I attract, also it's like, you know, just attracting, my father was my first love as well. So that's why I understand, regardless of his personality, and actually, I'm not gonna say that was his entire personality, because everyone has good moments. But he was, because I am his daughter, just that's the fact. Regardless if they're a great father or not, they're gonna be your first love. That's the first man you're introduced to. And so seeing his behaviors and not dealing with the mental and emotional, I guess, strongholds that were developed by living in that situation, I would talk to people just like that. But now that I'm in a process of understanding that, I feel hope and confident and that I don't have to go to that. I don't have to speak to a gentleman that's familiar because he reminds me of that situation.
And from a spiritual standpoint, that's one of the things I was going to say. It's a familiar spirit.
Familiar spirit, yes.
We attract those things that are familiar to us, in short. And it's amazing how, you know, the things we say we don't want is what
we'll be attracted.
We'll be attracted to. Even from when I was listening and hearing different ones talk, they feel a sense of obligation to stay in the situation. Like you said, it's going to get better. They say it's going to get better. It's going, you know, maybe they will change one day. But then 10 years down the line, you're still experiencing the same things that you were experiencing before. And there comes a point where you have to say, it's time for me to get out of this. Because, and then one of the things you said, not only is the person, the abuser, having self-esteem issues, but the person in the abusive situation begins to have self-esteem issues as well. You know, so when you begin to have those issues, you don't know what to do.
You know, there's a lot to be said and a lot to that we can discuss, but I'm hearing a lot of things, fear. I've experienced that with family members, fear, and especially like you mentioned early on, being helpless. And I know helpless as a little girl, but you have a lot of men as well that grow up angry because at that point you feel like, well, if this man is abusing my mother per se, I'm not strong enough, I'm not big enough to, you know, to take him on. And so you have a lot of factors or where we despise the other sex or whoever that abuser is, anything that resembles them. There are a lot of things, a lot of traumas, and again, women abuse as well. I think women abuse as well. Family members and nieces, and like you said, it's usually someone close. It has, you know, someone close that has access to you. But the lasting effects that are emotional and you know, PTSD at its best, really. That the lasting effects, the emotional effects relationally, just how we handle life. You can trace it back. I picture some children hiding. They're just absolutely afraid in the situation, or everything goes quiet. And so, you know, you don't close the door, don't open the door. It's just a lot of things that we experience when we're in these environments. And one of the things as believers, we say, oh, you don't need any professional help. You know, don't need any professional help. Believe God, you know, He's gonna do all His God stuff and things are gonna be okay. If you need help, and you need any professional help, we want to encourage you to reach out to professionals and preferably because we are believers, that they are Christian counselors, that they are believers, and you do need help, and it's okay. But even in that, I just want to speak today that the spirit of shame, because a lot of people, if you're watching, if you're listening in any type of way, the spirit of shame, when we stand with you today, that spirit of shame and condemnation is coming off of you, that you can speak, and where the enemy tried to silence you, because a lot of times in abusive situations, you've become silent and you've become muzzled and you cannot speak. But I just want to speak today and declare that you are free to speak, and that your mouth, your voice will not be muted. And I'm telling you, not only when you begin to speak, you're going to save not only yourself and healing for yourself, but healing for others as well.
Amen. That's so good, because some people have stories to tell.
Yes.
Many people have stories to tell. Like Veronica has a story to tell from a child's perspective, but there are some that are in the situation that have stories to tell, and they are not opening their mouth and not, and you'd be surprised how many women will say, "Me too."
Yes. Oh,
I hate to move on to not move on, but the Me Too movement, and sometimes it just takes one to say, I've been there, I've dealt with it, I know what it feels like. And before you know it, many will come forth and be like, hey, yeah, me too, this is what I've dealt with. But healing cannot take place until you deal with the issue. And we'll be dealing with that on the next broadcast. But the thing is that, like you said, a lot of people, their voice is silenced. And I'm pretty sure you went through that where you're like, wait a minute, I can't say anything, there's nothing I can do or anything like that. And how did that make you feel when things like that began to happen?
Horrible, small, just my father actually would say before we would go to school, don't tell your teachers, don't tell anyone about this. So you just feel helpless. It's just helplessness. It's just, it is the worst feeling ever. And I couldn't imagine how my brothers felt with that, but we literally were sent to school quiet. I had to sit, we had to sit in church like everything was pristine and beautiful. I remember one of the last times and one of the worst times for me, when my mother was, we were at the emergency room. She had a neck brace on. She had blood on her nose. I had to help her use the restroom. It was really bad. And when I describe these to my mother, she'll say, it wasn't that bad, but I'm like, but I'm looking at you. And for me and for your children, it's horrible. But we also, that was during Christmas season. So when she was released from the emergency room, we had Christmas dinner like nothing happened. My mom like put the pieces together. She got dinner ready. She fixed the table. We invited people over, and I was so angry. Like I was just inside.
A mess.
This was a crazy house. I was like, this is crazy. Why are we doing this? Something happened, and that's why I began to. That's why it's actually called Real Weight Loss, because I want people to be able to speak about these things and have a voice to do that, and understand that the issues that we carry, we need to let them go, and not just anywhere, but give them to God. And so for my healing, that's what I started doing, and I did that through working out.
So you found an avenue that worked for you.
I did. I used to go in the backyard also, and I used to play basketball when I was younger. I used to take the basketball and just slam it against the backboard. I wasn't even trying to shoot it. I was so angry. I would be back there just throwing the basketball against the hoop, because I was.
And you know, that says a lot. We have a lot of people in today's society that are angry. They're angry, and we don't know why. And or they won't release why. And just like Veronica, people take it out on whomever is around, and they may not even have been the one that did it, but they're taking it out on those around them. They're taking it out on whomever that speaks or that is familiar or reminds them of the situation, and it's causing bitterness, and it's causing anger, and it's causing hurt, unnecessary hurt, because it's not being dealt with.
And you talked about being silent. And one of the things, I know there's a scripture, I couldn't find it, but where you just refuse to, I will not keep silent. I will not keep silent. And I'm telling you again, that thing is, because I know people are, you're watching, and you'll go back and watch in YouTube. Refuse to be silent, and don't allow. I had a very close friend who actually, her husband killed her. And so, we start these funds and foundations, but why do we have to wait until someone's blood is crying from the ground, per se, when while we're here and while you have yet a voice, refuse to keep silent. I want to look at, because leaders are watching, and teachers are watching, and bus drivers and crossing guards. And I want to encourage you, because we're talking with Veronica Lino, and she's sharing the effects, the emotional effects, and the mental effects that it had on her childhood. And even, she's walking through some of it now. But I want to encourage you that if you are an administrator, if you have any contact with any children, to look alive, be aware, don't turn a blind eye. I don't care if you're a bus driver, cafeteria lady, man, janitor. If you come in contact, start watching the children that are in your vicinity and in your care. And I just want to share very briefly some signs of abuse, whether it's physical, but where they shy away, they're overdressing sometimes because of the abuse. They don't want to be touched. Bedwetting. If you have someone and you got a slumber party, and not just an accident, all the kids drank too much, but consistent bedwetting, wearing too much clothes, withdrawing, pulling away out of activities. These are the things where the behavior changed. You have to notice those signs and be an advocate for the children that are silenced. I grew up in a time where it's like what goes on in the house stays in the house. Yeah. And we have to know too our cultures, because that's something that we were raised with as African Americans, for sure. We don't want anything to happen. This is our business. If they have any questions, you tell them to call me. Yeah. And that was just the rule. That was the general rule of the house. And so we have to pay attention to that. And that's just, culturally, that's what we were taught. Yeah. We were taught. And then if we didn't tell it at all, it went down, and the old people, they died with the secrets. And now we're left to deal with trauma because of things passed down. But I just encourage people to talk and to watch our children.
Most definitely. And I want to say this to you guys. We're not just talking about physical abuse, because the symptoms and the signs are relatable to sexual abuse, emotional abuse, the physical, of course, and all the other types of abuse that come, spousal abuse, that come along with this. So we want you to know that abuse is not good on any level. No. So if you're dealing with it, like we said, there are places, like the one that keeps coming to my mind is Magdalena House. Yes. Magdalena House is one. There is Haven for Hope. The what?
The Battered Women's Shelter.
The Battered Women's Shelter. There are places, Veronica Lynn, real weight loss, that once you get going, she'll be able to help you even, while getting fit, you'll be able to lose some of this weight that's going on. Because there was a link that was sent to me about rejection and abuse, and how we tie food and all these different things to it. And we'll talk about that in the next broadcast. But this is good, because we want you to know that you're worth more than what you think you are. You don't have to stay in that relationship. Even for the kids, because the kids see, am I right? The kids see what's going on in the situation. Veronica, we have a little time left. We want you to look into the camera and just talk to them and let them know they don't have to deal with it.
Okay. Yes, if for anyone in the situation, you do not have to stay in the situation. And just be encouraged to know that God's also walking with you, and He's not ever left you or forsaken you. And you have value, you are enough. And then I also want to say that, to understand that what I've learned is, even in the situation, the people who may be doing the abuse, the abusers, I also would encourage you to pray for their souls as well. And to know that there are things that they also need to have worked out in their lives as well. But definitely don't stay in the situation. Let God work through that.
Wow.
Lastly, I want to share the National Domestic Violence Hotline. The number is 1-800-799-7273. Again, 1-800-799-7273, where you can reach out and get help as well.
Wow, good show. LaTanya, once again, they are in the know.